Cassini, a robotic spacecraft sent by NASA to explore the planet Saturn and the rings and moons that orbit around Saturn, launched from Earth in 1977 and entered orbit around the planet in 2004. Since then, images and data gathered by Cassini's instruments have transformed our understanding of Saturn and our solar system. Dr. Carolyn Porco, head of the Cassini Imaging Team and director of the Cassini Imaging Central Laboratory for Operations, known as Cyclops, works at the Space Science Institute in Boulder, Colorado. Dr. Porco previously worked at the University of Arizona, and she recently visited the Flandreau Science Center to talk about what we have seen and learned thanks to the Cassini mission.
Oh, it's a phenomenal mission. I mean, I think it'll go down in history as one of the most scientifically productive missions planetary missions that was ever flown. And I say this having come off Voyager. There'll never be a Voyager. I mean, Voyager was the romance of adventure. It was like a Homeric Odyssey is what Voyager was. And it was discovery, it was seeing things for the first time humanity had ever seen before. And I remember those days. You know, it defined me. The Voyager mission defined me. It made me want to go back to Saturn. But even Voyager can't compare to the things we found on Cassini, because we just have had the opportunity to be there and monitor things and come back for second, third, and fourth looks. And so we've discovered phenomenal things everywhere we've looked. What we've learned about the rings is in the rings we've been able to have a bird's eye view on what goes on at very high resolution. That is, when you look really, really close. And Saturn's rings are made up of countless particles, everywhere from the size of small apartment buildings down to, powder-sized ice particles, and everywhere in between. They seem to act more coherently together than we thought in places. That is, they're not really buzzing around like bees in a swarm, these particles. They're more like cars on a highway, right? And they're all going at a rapid rate of speed, but there's very little relative motion between them. And some of the most dramatic things that we were able to see was when the sun was shining edge onto the rings during the equinox. So there was a moment, August 2009, a moment being 4 Earth days long, when the sun was shining edge on to the rings, and that enhanced the visibility of small projections above and below the rings, because you could see their shadows. And so we actually got a sense of what the three-dimensional nature of the rings was during that opportunity, and it was astonishing. We found places where from a 30-foot thick disk system, that's how thick the rings are, only 30 feet thick, right? We see mountainous waves of rubble extending 3.5 kilometers above the rings. Okay, dramatic. I mean, I keep saying, I'd love to have been in a shuttlecraft flying across the rings. They would look, for all the world, if you're close to the rings, they'd look like they stretched on into infinity and coming upon a wall of rubble, several miles high. That should go in a science fiction movie. Then there's Titan. I mean, you said, what did we discover? Well, what we found with Cassini kind of confirmed things that had been suggested before. In some places we were really like, oh my God, that's completely brand new. But it had been predicted we would find liquid hydrocarbons on the surface of Titan. We did. They're at the poles. That's the unique thing. Like, no one knew where they'd be or what it would look like, but the whole equatorial region is covered in dune fields. And then there's rivers, river beds carved by flowing liquid hydrocarbons. I mean, that's enormously exciting. And rain. It's very similar in the kinds of processes that are going on in its surface. It's kind of Earth's twin in that regard. It's just processes operating in wildly different materials. Instead of silicate rock here on the Earth, it's ice there. Instead of water being the main driver of the hydrological cycle here on Earth, it's methane on Titan. I think that what we have found at Enceladus at the South Pole is the most thrilling, most profound thing Cassini has found. I could chew your ear off for hours about Enceladus. So in planning what we were going to do with the cameras on I'm the head of the imaging team. My team and I are worried about what pictures we're going to take. Enceladus was a major thing that we were going to investigate. We were going to look to see were there geysers on this thing. And then we found this unique terrain in a very large part of the surface at the South Pole. Looked young, characterized by 4 major fractures. It was ringed by a series of mountains and folds. There was an enormous amount of heat coming from this region. We got the opportunity to look in just exactly the kind of geometry you need to see tiny ice particles, and that's what we saw. We saw these dozens of jets just erupting into space from the South Polar terrain, going hundreds of kilometers into space. And when we got a look from afar, we could see these things just actually made their way into the E-ring. These tiny particles actually made their way into the E-ring. We have a picture that captures the creation of the E-ring by these geysers. That's again what makes Enceladus so unusual. Its liquid interior is bursting forth from the South Polar terrain. You know, I keep saying all we have to do is land on the surface, look up, and stick our tongue out, and we've sampled. We've got what we came for. You know, right now a major thrust of NASA's program is to look for those places in our solar system where life might have gotten started, or where life could at least live if it had been placed there, so to speak. Not that we want to do that. It could be snowing microbes on the surface of Enceladus. That's what's exciting. Mm-hmm. No, there's still more to learn, but I'm just saying there is a lot to be learned at Saturn, and we've learned a lot of it. In that sense, it's just a gigantic step forward. It's been, like I said, I think it'll go down in history as the most scientifically productive mission we've flown in exploring the planet so far.